My stepmother stole my father's fortune after his stroke, but she didn't know I had proof. You ever feel your whole life shift in a single hour? That was me. The moment my phone rang that morning, I knew something terrible had happened, but I couldn't imagine just how bad it was about to get. It was 6:12 a.m. My phone buzzing on the nightstand. I groggily reached over. Chris, my childhood best friend, was calling. He never called this early. I answered, my voice still half asleep. Chris? Danny. Man, you need to get to the hospital. It's your dad. I shot straight up, heart pounding. What? What happened? He collapsed. Stroke. Paramedics got him to St. Thomas. It's bad. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My dad, Robert, was the strongest man I knew. Owner of Northway Logistics, built his trucking company from nothing. He'd survived more than anyone I'd ever met, raised me on his own after my mom died when I was 6. The idea of him in a hospital bed felt impossible. I got dressed in under 5 minutes and was out the door. As I sped toward the hospital, one name kept circling in my head like a vulture, Patricia. My stepmother. The woman my dad married 6 years ago. The woman I never trusted from day one. Beautiful in that kind of polished, icy way. Always dressed like she was heading to a board meeting, even for Sunday brunch. She didn't marry my dad for love. Anyone could see that. She married him for his money, for the lifestyle. And my father? He was too kind, too lonely. After Mom passed, he never dated anyone until Patricia. She swooped in fast, and within a year, they were married. And suddenly, Brittany, Patricia's daughter from a previous marriage, was calling my dad Daddy, sitting in my mother's old chair at family dinners. I tried to swallow my suspicions back then, but they never fully left me. When I reached St. Thomas, Chris was waiting in the lobby. He pulled me into a tight hug. He's stable, for now. But it was bad, man. Real bad. Patricia was already in his room when I arrived. She barely looked at me. Daniel, she nodded, voice clipped. How is he? I asked. Doctor says time will tell. They stabilized him, but... She trailed off dramatically, dabbing her dry eyes with a perfectly clean tissue. I stepped past her and saw him tubes, wires, monitors beeping softly. My father, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who worked 16-hour days to build his business, lying there like a fragile shell of himself. The doctor pulled me aside a few minutes later. Massive ischemic stroke. He's lucky to be alive. But the damage, it's extensive. Full recovery isn't likely. We're starting immediate rehab, but cognitive function may never fully return. I sat by his bed for hours. He squeezed my hand weakly once. Tried to speak, but couldn't form words. I whispered, hang in there, Dad. I'm here. We'll get through this. But I wasn't the only one with plans. Because while I focused on my father, Patricia was already setting her game in motion. The thing about snakes like Patricia, they don't wait long when they smell weakness. My father hadn't even been out of ICU for a full 48 hours before she started circling like a shark. While I was camped out in that hospital chair, watching over my dad day and night, Patricia was busy meeting with lawyers, calling banks, and setting up meetings behind my back. At first, I didn't realize just how far she'd gone. But then, little clues started showing up. I noticed the first red flag when I stopped by Northway Logistics to check in on the business. My father may have been physically broken, but his company was still running, or at least, it should have been. When I walked into the office, the receptionist, Cindy, who'd worked for my dad for over 15 years, looked tense. Danny, she whispered as I entered, glancing around nervously. You probably shouldn't be here right now. Why not? I asked, confused. Cindy leaned in closer, dropping her voice. Patricia's here. She's been meeting with Mr. Jenkins all morning. Mr. Jenkins, our family's longtime attorney. The man who handled all of Dad's legal affairs, including the business and the will. I walked down the hall, heart pounding harder with each step. The door to Jenkins' office was slightly ajar. I heard Patricia's voice clear as day. We need to update the signatory access on all accounts, she said smoothly. And since Robert's health prevents him from managing day-to-day operations, it only makes sense for me to step in temporarily. Jenkins sounded hesitant. But Daniel, my stepson doesn't have business experience, she cut him off. He works a regular desk job, Jenkins. Northway needs someone familiar with Robert's wishes. I've been by his side every day, haven't I? This is what Robert would want. My blood boiled. This wasn't about helping my dad. This was a power grab. I didn't bother knocking. I pushed the door open and walked right in. Patricia's eyes narrowed immediately. Daniel, we weren't expecting you. I ignored her and looked straight at Jenkins. Did my father authorize this? In writing? Jenkins shifted uncomfortably. Patricia has presented a durable power of attorney that your father apparently signed several weeks before the stroke. My stomach dropped. Weeks before the stroke? I had no idea such a document even existed. And if I didn't know, that meant she'd kept it hidden for a reason. May I see it? I asked calmly, though my pulse was racing. Patricia smiled thinly, as if amused by my audacity. Of course. Full transparency, right? She slid the paperwork across the desk. I scanned the document. My father's signature was there, but something felt wrong. The date on it? Exactly 3 weeks before his stroke. And the notary listed? Brittany, Patricia's daughter. Of course. The woman brought her own daughter in to notarize a document that handed her control over every dollar my father had earned in his life. I slid the paper back across the desk. Convenient, I said coldly. You had this notarized by your own daughter. Patricia's smile didn't fade. It's perfectly legal. You know, Daniel, your father trusted me. It's unfortunate you always struggled with that. I wanted to reach across the desk and wipe that smug look off her face, but I held my composure. Barely. Instead, I looked Jenkins dead in the eyes. I want a full audit of all transactions made since my father's stroke, and I want to see the most recent version of his will. Jenkins shifted again. I'll have my office send over what we have on file. Patricia's eyes flashed. That wasn't part of her plan. Because here's the thing. My father and I may not have discussed his will often, but I knew he had one. And the last time we did talk about it, he made one thing crystal clear. Daniel, you're my only son. Northway will always be yours one day. But now, I was beginning to realize Patricia had been playing a much longer game than I'd ever suspected. The audit revealed the next bombshell. In the 2 days following my father's stroke, while he was fighting for his life in the ICU, Patricia had already drained $600,000 from various business and personal accounts. She called them necessary transfers for operational stability. The money went into a newly formed joint account under Patricia and Brittany's names. When Sarah, my attorney, saw the paperwork, she leaned back in her chair, rubbed her temples, and said what I was thinking. She's looting the empire while your father's still breathing. But the worst was yet to come. Because when Jenkins finally delivered the current version of my father's will, it wasn't the one I remembered. The original will, where I inherited full control of Northway Logistics, was gone. In its place, a brand new document, executed just 2 weeks prior to the stroke, splitting everything between Patricia and Brittany. I was listed for a token sum of $10,000, a slap in the face. I stared at the document in disbelief. Patricia didn't just want a slice of the pie. She wanted the whole damn bakery. Sarah looked up from reviewing the paperwork. Her eyes were cold now. Focused. Forgery. Coercion. Fraud. This isn't just shady, Daniel. This is criminal. I nodded, my hands trembling with a mix of fury and adrenaline. We're going to destroy her. After we saw that forged will, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was focused. Patricia thought she was playing chess while the rest of us were playing checkers. But now, she'd finally underestimated the wrong person. Sarah got to work immediately. We'll contest the will, she said. But we're not going to stop there. If we prove fraud, this becomes criminal. And Patricia knows it. We needed evidence, and a lot of it. Forgery cases aren't easy to win without catching someone red-handed or getting them to slip. Patricia was too calculated for that. But even the best manipulators make mistakes eventually. The first break came from an unexpected place. Cindy, my dad's longtime secretary. She asked to meet privately after work, looking nervous but determined. I kept my mouth shut for too long, she said, glancing over her shoulder. But I can't watch what she's doing anymore. Cindy revealed that several weeks before my dad's stroke, Patricia had been hovering around the office constantly, pressuring Robert to update his will. She kept saying things like, "We need to protect Brittany's future, Robert, and you should take the pressure off Daniel. He's young." According to Cindy, my father seemed uncomfortable but too exhausted to argue. But here's where it got interesting. The notary stamp on the new will? Cindy had never once seen Brittany certified as a legal notary in Tennessee. Bingo. Sarah filed a records request. Sure enough, Brittany's notary license? Non-existent. Forgery number 1. That opened the door. With the notary fraud exposed, we requested full security footage from the day the will was supposedly signed at the office. And there it was, my father barely conscious, being wheeled into Jenkins' office in a wheelchair, looking groggy and weak. Patricia standing behind him, whispering in his ear. Brittany sitting beside him with papers in hand. He never even held the pen himself. Patricia guided his hand across the page like some sick puppet master. We now had video proof of coercion. Sarah smiled when she saw the footage. That's not a signature. That's elder abuse. But Patricia wasn't going down quietly. The moment she caught wind of our filings, she went on the offensive, launching a PR campaign inside the company itself. She held staff meetings without me, spun the narrative that I was greedy and trying to steal Brittany's rightful share. She framed herself as the loyal wife who had been by my father's side through all his darkest days. Several longtime employees who had once respected me started acting distant. Chris, my best friend since childhood, pulled me aside one day. "You know she's paying some of them under the table, right?" "What?" I asked. "Bonuses." "Quiet once. She's buying loyalty while you're in court." Sarah wasn't surprised. "It's a classic move," she said. "Control the narrative while dragging your opponent into legal quicksand." But Patricia had made one key mistake. She thought everyone had a price. 2 weeks later, we got our second major break. One of Northway's junior accountants, nervous, sweating, probably no older than 25, reached out to Sarah through back channels. His name was Evan. He'd been instructed to create operational expenses and move large sums through shell vendors Patricia had set up. On paper, it looked like the company was paying for repairs, upgrades, and subcontractor fees. In reality, Patricia was funneling hundreds of thousands into private accounts. Money laundering. Now it wasn't just probate fraud. It was financial crime. Sarah sat across from me after reviewing Evan's full statement. "She's cooked," she said flatly. "When we bring this forward, not even her high-priced lawyers can bury it. This is prison time if the DA picks it up." But here's where things got really interesting. Right before we filed the criminal complaint, Jenkins, the family lawyer who had handled my father's estate for years, suddenly requested a private meeting. He looked exhausted when he arrived at Sarah's office, briefcase in hand. "I sunken. I can't keep doing this," Jenkins said softly. "Doing what?" Sarah asked, her tone calm but firm. "I knew Patricia was manipulating your father," Jenkins confessed. "I was pressured into going along with it." "Pressured how?" I demanded. Turns out, Patricia had dirt on Jenkins too. Years earlier, he had covered up financial irregularities involving another client, a situation Patricia somehow discovered and used as leverage to control him. She threatened to expose him unless he cooperated in rewriting my father's will. Sarah leaned forward. "You're prepared to testify?" Jenkins nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I should have spoken up months ago." Now we had a forged will, fake notary certification, coerced signature caught on video, an accountant's sworn testimony exposing the money trail, and the family attorney ready to flip. Patricia's entire house of cards was finally shaking. But the fight still wasn't over. Because as we were preparing for court, Patricia made one last desperate move that would blindside me completely. When cornered, people like Patricia don't fold, they lash out. And as the walls closed in around her, she made it painfully clear that she wasn't going down without inflicting as much damage as possible on her way out. The first sign came just 3 days after Jenkins flipped. I pulled up to Northway Logistics to meet with our board of directors, the emergency meeting Sarah helped me call once the fraud came to light. But when I got there, security was standing at the front door. "Sorry, sir," the head guard said awkwardly. "Patricia's given strict orders. Nobody enters the building today without her approval." I stared at him, stunned. "My father owns this company. Patricia doesn't have the authority to block me." The guard looked uncomfortable. Her lawyers provided documentation showing she's acting CEO for now, pending legal resolution. Sarah, of course, was already one step ahead. She pulled her phone out immediately. "Keep them talking," she whispered. Within an hour, we had a judge on the line. The emergency injunction came through fast. Patricia's attempt to lock me out? Officially illegal. Security had no choice but to stand aside. When I finally got inside, I found Patricia sitting at my father's old desk, the desk he built himself when he started Northway out of his garage 30 years ago. She was calm, smiling, like she still thought she held all the cards. "Daniel," she greeted me, sipping her coffee like we were chatting about the weather. "You're done," I snapped. "This is over. The courts have everything now. The fake will, the money laundering, the fraud, everything." But Patricia didn't flinch. She just leaned back in the chair. "You think this is about court, Daniel? Court is just paperwork. This is about people." That's when she revealed her next play. Over the past few weeks, she had been calling vendors, suppliers, and Northway's biggest clients, feeding them her version of the story. That I was unstable. That I was trying to dismantle the company for personal gain. That I was mentally unfit to run Northway. And worse, some of them believed her. Sarah warned me about this tactic days earlier. "She's poisoning the well," she had said. "If she can't beat you legally, she'll try to destroy your reputation and the company's financial stability." Patricia had even convinced several key employees, longtime department heads, to sign affidavits supporting her authority. They weren't loyal to her. They were scared, afraid of losing their jobs if she somehow won. I realized right then, Patricia wasn't fighting for money anymore. She was fighting to make sure that even if she lost, I'd inherit a broken empire. But Sarah wasn't rattled. If she wants war, she said coldly, we'll give her war. Within 48 hours, Sarah filed additional motions, a full court-appointed forensic audit of Northway's finances, subpoenas for every employee involved in her schemes, fraudulent misrepresentation charges to force those employees to testify under oath, and formal complaints filed to the State Business Regulatory Board. But Patricia's most reckless move came next, and it almost worked. She tried to liquidate the company's emergency fund. Over $2 million in cash reserves, funds my father had specifically built to keep the business afloat during downturns, were set to be transferred to a private holding company Patricia created offshore. Luckily, our injunction froze all non-essential financial activity just hours before the transfer was finalized. The DA's office immediately opened a secondary investigation into attempted wire fraud. And that's what finally shook her inner circle. The vendors she had manipulated started pulling away. The employees who signed affidavits? Several called Sarah's office begging for immunity deals, admitting they were coerced. The more we exposed, the faster her whole operation unraveled. Chris said it best one night over beers at Mike's bar. She played like nobody would ever challenge her. But you challenged her, Danny. And now she's drowning in her own lies. The court date was set. Full probate trial. Criminal charges stacked up. The media got involved. Northway's reputation was in the news daily. And just when I thought Patricia had no cards left to play, she pulled her final move. She filed a motion to declare my father legally incapacitated retroactively. Her argument? That my father had shown signs of declining cognitive ability even before his stroke. That any prior legal documents, including the original will leaving Northway to me, were invalid due to diminished capacity. If the court bought that argument, everything, even the original will, could be tossed out. Sarah looked me dead in the eyes as we prepped for trial. This is her Hail Mary. If she wins this motion, everything we've built could collapse. We have one shot to bury her. And I was ready. Because we had one witness Patricia didn't know about. One person who could destroy her entire narrative in front of the judge. My father's private neurologist. The morning of the trial felt like walking toward an execution, except this time, I wasn't the one on the chopping block. Patricia sat at the opposing table cool as ever, her hair perfect, her expensive lawyer team surrounding her like armored guards. Brittany sat behind her, stiff, avoiding eye contact with me entirely. Sarah leaned toward me and whispered, "This is where we break her." The courtroom was packed. Reporters, business associates, old employees, everyone who had watched this train wreck unfold over the past year. The judge, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Judge Holloway, walked in, and the room instantly fell silent. The trial started with Patricia's side presenting their argument. Her attorney spun the same tired narrative. My father was already mentally declining long before the stroke. He had frequent memory lapses. He forgot key business decisions. Patricia had to take control for the good of the company. The updated will reflected his true intentions as his health deteriorated. They even paraded a few former employees up to the stand, employees who had clearly been promised something early on. They testified to my father forgetting meetings, asking the same questions twice, missing names. On paper, it sounded bad. Like maybe Patricia had a case after all. But then it was our turn. Sarah started with Cindy's testimony, the longtime secretary who knew my father better than anyone. She was clear, direct, and unshakable. Robert never forgot names. He never missed meetings. He ran that business sharp until the week of his stroke. Patricia controlled his access to outsiders as his health slipped. Before that, he was fully capable. Then came Evan, the junior accountant. He laid out the money laundering scheme with receipts, emails, falsified invoices, everything Patricia thought was buried. And finally, we brought in the heavy hitter, Dr. Patel, my father's private neurologist. He stepped up to the stand, calm and professional. Sarah began, "Doctor, based on your extensive evaluation of Mr. Robert Evans prior to his stroke, can you state your medical opinion regarding his cognitive abilities?" Dr. Patel didn't hesitate. At the time of my examinations, Mr. Evans showed no signs of cognitive impairment. His memory, reasoning, and executive functions were intact and appropriate for his age. Sarah pressed further. "And would you say he was legally capable of managing his affairs?" "Absolutely." Patricia's lawyer tried to rattle him during cross-examination, suggesting subtle signs could have been missed. Dr. Patel stayed solid. If such signs existed, they would have appeared during my tests. They did not. You could feel the energy shift in that courtroom. For the first time, Patricia looked nervous. She knew she was losing. But Sarah wasn't finished. Her final bomb was Jenkins, the attorney Patricia had blackmailed. He took the stand and delivered the final blow. How Patricia pressured him. How she used threats to force the forged will. how she orchestrated every document after manipulating my father in his weakened state. The judge sat silently, scribbling notes, her face unreadable. After closing arguments wrapped, the court recessed. Hours later, Judge Holloway returned with her ruling. Her voice was calm but firm. The evidence presented shows clear and convincing proof of fraud, coercion, and elder exploitation. The amended will is hereby invalidated. Full control of Northway Logistics reverts to Daniel Evans per the original estate plan. I exhaled for the first time in months. But the judge wasn't done. Furthermore, this court recommends the DA pursue full criminal charges against Patricia Evans and Brittany Evans for financial crimes and attempted wire fraud. The evidence has been submitted accordingly. Patricia's face, for the first time, broke. She wasn't calm anymore. She wasn't smug. She was pale, lips quivering, hands shaking. Brittany burst into tears behind her. The marshals approached them before they even stood up, placing both women in handcuffs right there in front of the entire courtroom. For a second, Patricia locked eyes with me as they led her away. No more fake smiles. No more manipulation. Only fear. I didn't say a word. She wasn't worth it. Sarah placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "It's done." You think when you win something like this, when the villains finally get dragged away in cuffs, that you'll feel nothing but triumph. But that's not how it works. Victory doesn't erase the scars. It just gives you space to finally start healing. In the weeks after the trial, everything moved fast. Patricia and Brittany were both officially indicted, multiple counts each. Fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, elder abuse, the list went on. Their high-priced lawyers tried bargaining, but with all the evidence Sarah had collected, there wasn't much left to negotiate. Patricia ended up taking a plea deal, 12 years in state prison. Brittany got 5 years, plus probation, for her role in notarizing forged documents and helping funnel money through shell companies. Watching them get sentenced didn't bring joy. It brought peace, closure. For the first time since my father's stroke, I could finally sit with him without the crushing weight of the legal war hanging over our heads. His recovery was slow, but steady. Speech therapy helped him regain most of his words. He still struggles with his right side, his hand trembles when he holds a cup too long, but his mind? Sharp as ever. The first time he looked me in the eye and said my full name again, I nearly broke down. "Daniel," he said softly, "you saved everything." We sat on the porch together that afternoon, watching trucks pull in and out of Northway Logistics, still running, still alive. I told him everything. About Patricia. About Brittany. About how close they came to destroying everything he built. He listened quietly, his face grim. "I should have seen it," he finally said. "I let them in. I trusted them." I shook my head. "You trusted love, Dad. That's not a crime. What they did is." Chris and Mike stayed by my side through all of it. Chris officially came on board at Northway, promoted to operations manager, helping me rebuild trust with the employees Patricia tried to turn against me. Mike handled security and logistics, making sure nothing like this ever slipped through the cracks again. We weren't just rebuilding the company. We were fortifying it. Financially, the business bounced back stronger than I could have imagined. Vendors returned. Clients who once doubted me publicly apologized. Several even offered larger contracts, impressed by how transparent we had been during the fight. But what I valued most wasn't the money. It was my father, sitting at the head of that old conference table again, even if only in a limited capacity. And as for me, for the first time in my life, I finally understood what my father had carried on his back all these years. The weight of protecting something that others would do anything to steal. The weight of legacy. There are still nights I lie awake thinking about how close we came to losing it all. How Patricia nearly pulled it off. How if Jenkins hadn't flipped, if Cindy hadn't spoken up, if Evan hadn't come forward, or if Sarah hadn't fought like hell, we might be living in a very different reality right now. But we're here. We survived. And we didn't just survive, we won. Northway remains a family company, the one my dad built, and now, the one I protect. Not because I'm entitled to it, but because I earned it. And if I've learned anything from this entire nightmare, it's this: the greatest danger doesn't come from enemies you see. It comes from the ones you trust. But when they finally reveal themselves, when you expose them for what they truly are, that's when you take back everything. And you make damn sure they never steal another piece of your life again.